Good.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining our March meeting of the Crownsville Advisory Committee. I'm Chris Trumbauer. I'm the chair of the committee, and I'm joined by Hannah Dyer, who's lead staff. And we're happy to see you at least virtually in this kind of interim check-in before our final subcommittee reports, draft reports. We are still looking at a time to schedule the next meeting in May, and we'll talk about that at the end of this meeting. But we have a fairly straightforward agenda for you today. We know subcommittees are doing their work offline to get their draft recommendations together. So this is mostly an interim check-in on that. But we also have a couple of project updates from some of our experts. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into that with our lead agenda item, which is project manager Mike Stroud will give us a general update and then also a specific update on the wastewater facility status because there's been some things moving with that. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Chris. I'll give a quick overview of the water and wastewater facilities on the campus. I'm screen sharing a map here. Hopefully everyone can see. It gives a kind of an overview of the water and wastewater lines on the campus. As you can see, the blue is water and the green is wastewater. And we're kind of on an island in Crownsville. The surrounding area is mostly septic and well systems. So if I zoom in on the campus, the wastewater facilities are on the southern part of, or the western part of the campus. And we have 2 irrigation lagoons and 3 storage ponds. And then we have spray fields surrounding the wastewater treatment facility. It's permitted for 0.3 million gallons per day. And that's essentially an overview of the wastewater facilities. We have some immediate needs being addressed. We're looking at replacing liners and then repairing some of the spray fields to get the facility up to speed. Then some embankment repairs on the aeration lagoons. We're also doing an evaluation of the long-term needs for the wastewater facilities. We're looking at a pumping station possibly to replace the facilities. So that may be coming online in a couple of years. We have a lot of assessments to go through for that to figure out the alignment of the force main. That's going to be the big issue. Once we have the pumping station set up, where does the force main discharge to? So that's what we're looking at right now as a possible scenario to replace the existing wastewater treatment facility. If we do that, as you can see, the aeration lagoons, the storage ponds, the spray fields surrounding it, it comprises about 50 acres of usable space. So if we did change to a pumping station and a force main, that would free up about 50 acres for usable space on the campus. I want to stress that that's in an evaluation process right now. It's going to be the force main alignment is going to be the big issue, where it goes when we leave the facility, whether it goes down Crownsville Road or it goes down General's Highway. We know we're going to have a lot of issues with the property, the rights of way, that sort of thing. So we're kind of at the starting block of a long analysis for that scenario. But we've started it now. We're looking at those alignments. But it'll be a couple of years, I think, before we would have a sewage pumping station online. And in the interim, with those immediate needs addressed, the immediate repairs, it's possible that we would bring the wastewater treatment plant back online, use it in the interim while the sewage pumping station is being designed. Because as of right now, we've got those immediate needs identified, and we're working with contractors to get proposals for all of those items. But as a temporary measure, the wastewater treatment system has been taken offline, and we're pumping and hauling out of aeration lagoon number 1. We pump it out of there, and then we transport it via trucks to a nearby treatment facility for discharge and treatment. That's temporary while we're working on the immediate needs. And like I said, we might be bringing the wastewater treatment plant back online, at least in the interim, while we identify the pumping station option.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike. So just
Yeah.
in summary, it sounds like the lagoon, there may be a replacement scenario where we would not treat waste on site sometime in the future, but for the near term outlook, it will either be pumped and hauled or operations will resume on site. But the long term possibilities would be connecting into the public system. Or is there also a chance that a more modern on-site facility could be developed, or is really the direction we're headed to to connect into the public system somewhere?
That was, Chris, one of the options evaluated was modernizing the system and getting off the spray field type of discharge. But from a benefit cost analysis, it wasn't the preferred option. That came to the forefront as the pumping and the force main option, which we're pursuing right now.
Okay, very good. So is it fair to say that as subcommittees are developing their recommendations or looking at different concepts, that there could be a scenario when that 50 acres that's the footprint of the current spray field operations that might be available for some other use besides wastewater treatment?
Yes, definitely. But I mean, there is a possible scenario where we would continue with the spray fields for some sort of time. So any options that should be one of the options, that
Yep.
maybe is phased in the future.
Okay. So yeah, committees should just take that into consideration. There may be a long-term scenario where those blue boxes are no longer in operation and other things could be there, but that's only one possible path. And in the near term, next several years, we should count on that footprint remaining as it is, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members on the specific topic of wastewater treatment? Councilwoman Rabian?
Thank you. I'm just curious, you mentioned that 1.3 million gallons per day at the very beginning, and I'm curious how does that match with the current needs, and how much additional capacity does that leave for, additional needs going forward?
Yeah, definitely. So it's 0.3 million gallons per day is our permitted flow capacity, and that
Oh,
was
sorry.
no problem. And that was when it was a fully operational hospital. Right now, we're at about a third of it. We're at about 0.1, and that's what we've been operating with for about 20 since the facility closed. That's been about the average daily flow rate. So in its current capacity and arrangement, it has about 2/3 more capacity.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good question. Anything else for Mike on the subject of wastewater treatment on this Monday morning? All right. Seeing no other questions, we'll close that agenda item. Mike, did you have any other general project updates, or was your update today specific to the wastewater facility?
Specific to wastewater, we do, as far as project manager updates, there are other facility improvements going on at the campus. We're looking at an IT fiber connection, improving access control and security, electrical utility improvements, water meters, working on those. We do have the patient cemetery memorial that's moving along. Maryland Historic Trust requested some additional information, so we're working on a consolidated response back to the information that they needed. And then also water treatment plant upgrades. In addition to the wastewater treatment plant, we're going through a similar analysis and upgrade, looking at the water treatment. That's as far as other project manager updates. That's all I have.
No, very good. Is there any sort of updated timeline for the cemetery memorial that you can share?
Not until we get past Maryland Historic Trust.
Okay.
But I mean, anything else we can move while we're working on that, we're pursuing that at the same time. But until we have that response into the Maryland Historic Trust, hopefully next month. We're hopeful in a couple of months they'll give us, okay, you've satisfied our requirements, you can move ahead.
All right, very good. Well, thanks very much, Mike. I, for one, sleep better at night knowing that you're on the job as project manager. So thanks. Thanks for everything that you're doing. Our next item on the agenda is an update from the public workshops. I think we've got Cecily on.
We seem to be having some issues getting her. She's rejoining as a panelist now.
Okay, very good. So hold 1 second, everybody, and we'll get Cecily hooked up.
I think I'm on. Am I on? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as you know, the public workshop was held February 13th. We got a lot of input from the community. We'll discuss a little bit about extending the community outreach to create some more outreach for folks that are disenfranchised or community members that may not have been present. But overall, it was 160 people at the workshop. We had it for a little over 2 hours from 6 to 8 p.m. We received comments via the table discussions. We had a total of 11 different facilitated table discussions with in 2 rounds. We also allowed people to post notes on any of the boards, and we received a lot of comments that way. And additionally, there was an opportunity to leave us quote unquote postcards, which we got from a large amount of folks. So we assembled all of that information and put it together in a public workshop 1 summary that allowed us to then take all that raw data and then to narrow it down and note the consensus points. So what we found was actually a lot of consensus. There were some novel ideas, I will say, but there weren't any large conflicting outside ideas. For example, with Rec and Parks and their upcoming recommendations, looking at a limited number of fields rather than an excessive amount of fields. There was a lot of talk in the workshop about trails, about remembering the history of the site and documenting that, of course, connecting to the cemetery, but also protecting the cemetery. So all of those things to stay in balance. So I think there was a large consensus, but as I think Michael may have talked about before I got connected audio, was the need to do further outreach to disenfranchised community members that we didn't see there, that we know have played a large part in the history of Crownsville, such as staff and former patients.
Great. Thank you, Cecily. And for those who didn't see, Hannah has put in the chat a link to the workshop 1 summary that gives some more information based on Cecily's update. And then can you remind us what other future public outreach or comment periods do we have scheduled going forward?
Sure. So first, the subcommittees are to put together their list of recommendations, and that's being assembled now. I believe they've been asked to prepare those late April, early May. Again, we are sitting in all of those subcommittee meetings as they proceed. So we're hearing their live conversations and debates and, consensus points on that. Then in our current contract, we have Public Workshop 2, which was slated to be in May. I think that will be maybe pushed a bit just to allow for the, if you will, further outreach for a second meeting to capture more audience, more of those community members that I just mentioned. We also then have a third public workshop, really an open house towards the end of the process when our draft recommendations are in, when the report is at about 85%. Again, that was slated for fall. So, this is all news as we heard back from the steering committee that to extend outreach a bit further. So, Michael, I don't know if you want to weigh in. I don't want to go above my skis here to weigh in on that. But if you want to step in and talk a little bit further about the schedule and any adjustments, that would be great.
Yeah, no, what you stated was accurate, Cecily. So, Chris, the direct answer to your question, it's looking May, June timeframe would be our next large public outreach, similar to the last one that we had. And in the interim, we're working to get that expanded outreach meeting scheduled, hopefully May timeframe. So May and June will be our next targets. And I do want to state, the project website is live and the project email address is live. So anybody who has ideas, keep those coming in. That's ongoing, and we do, every week we get a couple of ideas from people sending in, and those get logged and cataloged and distributed to the groups.
Very good. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Cecily. And just to clarify, because you mentioned the subcommittee reports, we are looking at a late May timeline for those draft reports, and then hopefully then they can be finished by early June, and then that will be something that the consultant team will have as reference material for when they put together their master plan. So that's a good segue into our next. Well, are there any questions for Cecily on public outreach before we move on? Okay, seeing none, I think it then is time for us to go into our subcommittee updates. And again, in recognition that you all are working hard outside of these meetings to get your draft reports done, I think what we're looking for today is a quick maybe progress update or status update, but also if you have any questions or concerns or things you need clarified or things you need help with that you want to bring to the attention of the committee, that would be good. So I'm going to go in order of the agenda, and we're going to start off with Recreation and Parks, and we've got Subcommittee Chair Scott Himes here to give that report. Take it away, Scott.
Hey, everybody. Well, it's moved along very well. We have started our short list, if you want to call it that. It's not really short, but we definitely have gotten a lot of great feedback. And I think some of you know, we met with some former, with someone who's basically speaking for the former employees and family and friends who had worked at the hospital and learned a lot about the experience, the positive experience of that. I was lucky enough to be invited yesterday to meet Antonia Hilton at Faye Belt's house. If anybody knows Faye, her mother was a nurse there, and she lived there, worked there, I should say, and as a teen and grew up around there. And she brought together, I would probably guess, about 50 people who all were either doctors or nurses or worked there in one capacity or another. And she actually was doing her own bit of facilitation there, trying to get everybody to comment on what some good things they would enjoy there, like to see. We'll, of course, bring that forward. It just happens to echo a lot of the stuff we've already been thinking and heard. But there might be a few more good ideas coming out of that. They certainly are energetic and passionate. So we're doing very well. We have the capable help, of course, of Erica Jackson. And we are very, very fortunate to have a great committee that is just plowing through the ideas, vetting them, trying to thin them out to the point where we'll have our report done on time. We're close.
Great. Well, thanks, Scott. And so to the best of your knowledge, you guys are on track and progressing towards that May draft report timeline?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Crossing fingers.
All right, good. Well, we internally refer to you guys as the idea committee, so it sounds like you've reinforced that with your report. Any quick questions for Scott or the Rec and Park subcommittee? All right, well, thanks for leading off. Now we'll go to the Cultural History Subcommittee. I don't believe we've got Jacqueline Alsop with us today, but we've got Jansen, Evelyn, lead staff. So, Jansen, are you prepared to make the subcommittee report?
Yes, I can do a quick update. We had our last meeting. First of all, good morning, everyone. Good to see you. We had our first meeting, our last meeting on this past Thursday at 3:30. Our meetings always tend to go long, between 1.5 to 2 hours. So we continue to discuss various pitches or recommendations that have been coming from other subcommittees or other members of additional subcommittees, as well as what our own subject matter experts have questions on. Specifically, we spent a lot of time, as we know that we're getting into the latter stages around, we have to like kind of cull down our list of recommendations. There's always some level of dissonance between we make the recommendation, but then what's the next step? So because you have a lot of people like Elizabeth Hughes, these are, we have directors that are there. They want to know what is going to happen next. And so we were fortunate to have Cecily at the last meeting where she said that those ideas, they get ultimately culled or incorporated into the master plan. But the one thing that people are very passionate about is when we can give lists or recommendations around how or what stories need to be told, but it's probably one of our very frank recommendations is going to be the need about having some sort of museum planning process, because while Design Collective and their subcontractors are doing important work, when we're talking about how we're going to have this iterative storytelling done around the campus, it's going to have to be done through some sort of planning process done specifically with an eye around the museum pieces. So we spent a lot of time around that subject, and we're going to engage in that a bit more so that our recommendations reflect that. So we're moving full steam ahead. We're going to have a report within, you said the May timeline. That's going to be there. I know that we've been assigned an additional task of talking about creating a list potentially of names for future sites, if any, or potential renamings. And I know that that continues to be a source of discussion, because believe it or not, some members of our subcommittee are of the mindset that they should stay the same, and others are like, no, we need to kind of create a roster, and it has to be done with some level of research philosophy. So that's where we are.
Wow. So sounds like a lot going on in your committee.
It's a lot. It's a lot, good sir.
I have no doubts that you will find a way to bring consensus on the naming issue. So, but all things considered, you guys are on track. No major issues or concerns for end of May draft report.
Yeah, we'll definitely have the draft report. It's definitely going to be there. Again, the only thing that I probably need some guidance from you all would be, what is the timeline ultimately of this naming, or having a final list of names? That I know that was supposed to be when it was first offered to me or suggested that we look into that. They were talking about it would be a slightly longer timeline. So members of our subcommittee are saying, following the final report, how much longer are we supposed to be meeting? And so that's something that can be addressed offline, but
okay,
that's something that I want to be able to bring back to the team at our April meeting.
Very good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any questions for Jansen or his committee? Great. All right. Halfway through the subcommittee updates, and now we'll turn it over to health and wellness, and we've got Dr. Pam Brown here. Oh, you're on mute there, Pam.
I was just saying happy Monday. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I think our committee is working very hard. We have lots of very differing opinions on the committee, which I think is a good thing. At the last meeting, we agreed on our 4 draft goals. Just got to do some cleaning up of that. We listened to some proposals from the veterans. We talked a lot about recognizing and understanding and increasing equity. We talked about community gardening. So really very interesting. And because we have existing tenants on our committee, we tend to hear a lot about existing conditions and barriers and what you can and can't do right at the moment on Crownsville. So certainly we have lists of barriers that we're considering. Coming up, we have a joint meeting with the Infrastructure Committee to talk about housing. We're all interested in that. Funnily enough, housing has not been a major issue for health and wellness, especially given the issues with housing in the county. So it's sort of interesting that that has not bubbled up in the same way. We've done a lot of talk about healing and respecting the past. So we'll see where that goes. Our April meeting is a 90-minute in-person meeting, and there's a whole set of reasons for that, including that we're going to try and come up with prioritized recommendations at that meeting from all the things we've discussed. But we will also have Asha with us to do the equity lens, because my committee continues to say that that has to be at the bottom and top and all the way in between everything we do. So that will be an interesting conversation. We've got Miss Diane Phillips-Laguerre coming to talk with us. She specifically asked to talk to the Health and Wellness Committee. She's the daughter of the superintendent, Superintendent Phillips. She also worked at Crownsville, so I think that's going to be really, really interesting. And then we will do our prioritization. We are on course to have our recommendations by May. I don't see any issues with that. And I have really enjoyed this work. Just finished the book. It feels like a really, really important project. And the more that we understand, I think the more important it becomes.
Great. Well, thanks, Pam. It's really excellent just to hear all the work that's going on, outside of this committee, but within the subcommittees. It's just the scope of it is so large. So thanks for that good update. It sounds like you've got some exciting things coming up in your committee as well. Any questions for Pam? All right, then we'll go from health and wellness to infrastructure. So that is Allison Taylor. If you can give us an update for your committee.
Great. We had our last meeting about 10 days ago where we considered some draft recommendations, which we're going to be refining at the next couple of meetings. One real, I'd say, strong feature of our group is that we have a lot of professional expertise that's coming to bear on this. Former engineers, architects, people with background in historic preservation. So there's a lot of good feedback that I'm getting on the recommendations that we had drafted and put forward. As Pam notes, we're going to have a joint meeting on housing this week. And that, like her, has not been something that's really bubbled up from us. I did see in the public comments that we got from Hannah, there were one or two things related to that. I will note, we went through and looked at all of the public comments to see what facilities, if any, people had specifically requested for their uses. And with the exception of one group, nobody that we saw had identified like a do or die request coming to us specifically. Some of the other committees may, especially I would think coming from the former tenants, have a preference about where they go, but we're not seeing a ton of that. We have reviewed the KCI facility condition report, and we did recently receive the RK&K utility report that was discussed earlier at this. So we'll probably add a recommendation related to that report to ours. We have our next meeting in late April, and we'll be discussing refining those recommendations. And then my plan would be for us to have another meeting in May and finalize those recommendations at that point. So we're on the same timeline.
Great. So that's 4 subcommittees and 4 paths to success laid out, it sounds like. So well done. Any questions for the infrastructure committee this time? No? All right. So then that leads us to talk a little bit before we do overall questions and comments. I did want to bring up the next meeting, for this group, which we've got tentatively scheduled for May. We had been meeting on Mondays the last couple in deference to our friends in the state legislature because this is helpful for their schedule. They certainly should be done by May, so we can consider the next date. Hannah will look at that in a process outside of this meeting where you'll get an email. But we were meeting, I think, Thursday mornings. We are looking at late May, which I think if we stuck with that, we would be probably either May 23rd or May 30th, Thursday morning. So none of that is set in stone, but if that works for folks, Hannah can follow up and we'll either set a tentative date and see if folks can make it or maybe do the dreaded doodle poll. But I'll leave that administration to happen after this meeting. But does anybody want to speak now in preference or objection to going back to Thursday mornings? Well, we're good. Okay, getting thumbs up and nods of the head. Okay, perfect. So stay tuned. We'll do a follow-up to set that meeting date, but we're looking at probably the 23rd or the 30th. So one way or another on one side of the Memorial Day weekend. Great. All right. So now it's time for general questions from committee members. If you've got a question on anything we've discussed today or anything that we didn't discuss that you think we should, the floor is open to committee members at this time. Just speak up or hit your raise the hand button.
I'd like to jump in for a sec, if that's okay.
The chair recognizes Scott Hines.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. We are, as in our committee, you can imagine that the situation with the fields, the spray fields, and that system is certainly would hinder some of the ideas that we have coming out. And I'm just that is, I guess we have to have one list and then another list, and I guess stage it that way because there'll be maybe for year 1 through 5. This is what we wanted, our ideas, and then 5 through or 3 through 5 years, we have a different or an additions to the plan. I mean, ideas, I should say, but prioritizing those things, great with all those 50 acres, our priorities would probably all be covered, but with less than those 50 acres, they wouldn't probably.
Yeah. Well, so great topic to bring up, Scott. And just remember, so subcommittees are kind of making recommendations on concepts forward and all of that. So you can certainly have some if-then statements in there, right? But another thing to consider for that specific question is there's 2 operations of the current wastewater facility. There's the lagoons, which are more permanent structures or semi-permanent structures. And those were the blue boxes that Mike showed on the map. And then we've got our satellite spray fields, which are basically just meadows. And those are largely in the otherwise forested areas around the property that are in the conservation easement. So I think for those spray fields areas, there are probably not a lot of potential for active uses just based on the geography of where they are. For the actual lagoons, those blue boxes, if the facility gets decommissioned and it's either hooked into public service or there's a new facility that gets built, that real estate could potentially become available for something. But as we heard Mike said, that's off in the future. So I think you can think about it in those terms of, if so and so happens, then this is an idea we could consider it in the future, but it's probably not going to impact the short term opening of various amenities on the site. If that makes sense.
It does. The one comment I would say is that the spray fields would be awesome community gardens, probably very fertile soil.
Sure. Yeah,
possibly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Lots of soil testing to be done.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, very good. All right. Well, thanks, Scott. Council Member Rodvian.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of follow up on the the couple mentions I heard of possibilities for housing. And I'm glad to hear it was mentioned a couple times, but I'm also a little concerned to hear that it didn't get, that it sounds like it wasn't mentioned a whole lot in the conversations. And I think that that's just because that's such a huge need in the county right now. I feel like that's all I think about lately is housing and how to increase housing, that that maybe we recognize that folks that would be, encouraging that use, or at least, some of the space for that use may not be the ones in the conversation. And so I just wanted to kind of elevate the idea of housing and state that for the record.
Thanks, council member. And I think how I've heard the county executive articulate his vision, and I think how we've approached this is looking at potential targeted housing opportunities that keeps in line with the health and healing vision for the site, but obviously not large scale housing development, obviously. But I think that some sort of housing has been mentioned. I think there is a level of interest in accommodating something, and so that will definitely be something that the committees are looking at going forward. So thanks for elevating that again. All right, last call for committee member questions, and then we will entertain public comment if there is any. Okay, going once, twice. All right, thank you. And so at this point, with Hannah's assistance, I think we will see if there are any non-committee members that want to make a comment from among our attendees. You can do that by raising your hand on the function, which should be at the bottom of your screen.
So we do have about a dozen attendees on the webinar, but I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand.
Okay, well, this is a good time to remind folks that they can always submit a public comment to our email address, which I unfortunately don't have in front of me, but I'm guessing Hannah, or Mike, you probably know it. It's got some dashes and the word Crownsville in it somewhere. Can you state that for the public record?
I think I'm just looking through my email to make sure I have it right, but here it is. Crownsville-park-comments@aacounty.org. So I'll just say it one more time. Crownsville-park-comments@aacounty.org.
Awesome. And that feeds into our overall collection of comments. So every comment gets read, it gets categorized, and it gets included into our record. So with that, I think we will close the public comments. And and Mike has put the website up in our chat, which I'll read out. It's www.aacounty.org/Crownsville Park. So that will have more information on the committee, as well as that email link that Hannah read out. So aacounty.org/Crownsville Park, all one word. Great. Well, that was a nice, I think, concise meeting. We will go ahead and adjourn now and let you guys get back to your important subcommittee work. Please stay tuned for communication soon from Hannah to schedule the date of our May meeting, which will that be virtual again, Hannah? Is that the plan?
Yeah, I believe we talked about doing this one virtual as well.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Happy Monday, and we'll see you again soon.